This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Hello and welcome to Roots and All. This week I'm speaking to co-founder of Roots Allotments Ed Morrison. Along with Christian, Will and Josh, Ed set up Roots Allotments on a site in Bath as an alternative to traditional allotments with their long waiting lists, large and often difficult to manage plots, and they set up a low carbon footprint, no dig and wildlife friendly site where people could lease some space and join the grow your own food movement. I began by asking Ed how the idea for Roots Allotments came about.
So we basically noticed that with council allotments, the waiting lists are really, really high. The state of the patch that you get is really awful. When you get there, you need to put in about 30 to 50 hours of work before you can even plant a seed. On top of that, it's pretty overwhelming to come to a council allotment and see it all overgrown and then sort that out, then work out what seeds you need, what equipment you need. We just really wanted to make the Roots Allotments experience like as easy as possible for people to get involved with growing, because it's such a healing activity to take part in, both for like your soul and the planet, and just to sort of start to cut down on your carbon emissions and get closer to the natural way of doing things. So we wanted to just basically flip the whole model on its head and go, how can we get people growing as quickly as possible? And that's the premise of Roots Allotments, essentially. Yeah.
Lots and lots to unpack there that makes you different to conventional allotments. So I guess my first one is, you mentioned waiting lists. How are your sites different to traditional allotments in that sense?
So we're looking to sort of identify cities with the largest waiting lists and open up there so we can start to ease the problem a little bit. We're not going to get rid of the waiting list because the appetite to grow is massive, but if we can provide a solution that we can scale up and sort of grow quicker than the council allotments, because we noticed that council allotments, they don't really open that many new ones. Like in Bath, for instance, they are opening a new one, but it is on top of ex-landfill site, so I'm not sure people would want to garden on it. The council have just been very, very slow to sort of help ease this problem, which is why waiting lists are just astronomical. So when I was basically talking to my friends in London, who are my business partners on this, and we really wanted to get an allotment in London. And in Lambeth, the waiting lists there are 25 years. It's so long to wait to get growing. That's 25 growing seasons you'll miss and never, ever get back again.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? Okay, so you've got how many sites at the moment?
So we have a site in Bath, just outside the city centre, and we've just launched our Bristol site, which is over the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Abbotsleigh Woods. We're also in conversations with someone in Nottingham, Exeter, Reading, Slough. We're sort of spreading out the message and trying to have as many conversations with lots of different people who have access to land to help us get this set up in places where it's needed most. I think in Nottingham there's about a 7-year waiting list.
Wow, it's crazy. And in terms of a business model, do you lease the land? Do you buy the land and then lease it out to people?
So we get long-term leases, and then we have people come to us as members. So within their membership, they can either pay monthly or they can pay yearly, and they get bi-monthly seed packs. We do plug plant parties where we get everyone together under our TP and give away loads of plug plants. We provide people with online courses, so they have a bit of educational material to go from and get involved with. This year at our Bath site, I put on a really exciting sort of spread of guest speakers to come and do workshops with everyone on the site. So it's just like trying to really put sort of community at the heart of what we're doing. We found that with council allotment sites, they tend to be lacking a bit of community, and we just want to sort of use Roots as a platform to bring people together over the common ground of growing. So no matter where you're from, as long as we are like sort of nature lovers and we've got growing in common, I'm pretty sure we're all going to get on.
And thinking about the cost, how does that compare to your traditional allotment site? Because I know you offer different sizes of patch, don't you, as well?
Yeah, so our starter patch is $9.99 a month, and that is 3 meters by 4 meters. So you've got 12 meters squared to get going on. And we sort of wanted to make that because we want people to realize that for the same price as like a Spotify subscription or a Netflix subscription. They can be outside getting the key skills to be able to grow their own food whilst also enjoying the benefits of being outside and sort of immersed in nature. So it felt like a bit of a no-brainer to make a small patch size just to get people involved in the growing movement, because council allotments, they tend to be really, really big in some places, and it's just a total overwhelming experience when you get there. You don't want to be dealing with the overgrownness and then working out the logistics of how you grow there. So with our starter patch, you can just sort of turn up on the day. I'll show you how to plant some seeds. If we've got some onion sets or some potatoes, we'll also put those in. And I'll give people a bit of an intro to growing there in person whilst I'm welcoming them to community. So it's like a real immersive experience for someone, and you just don't get that anywhere else.
No. Traditional allotments, obviously, you go on your waiting list, you get the allotment, and then you have it for, I guess, until you either get kicked off it or you relinquish it. So, how does that work on your sites? Can people just keep their patch indefinitely until such times as they don't need it anymore?
Yeah, so people can stay for as long as they like. We do have a 50% cultivation sort of rule. I think a lot of council allotments are around 70%. We just wanted to make it not as hard a barrier to entry, because we're totally understanding that when allotments were set up, people lived very different lives to how they live now. And we have less time on our hands now to sort of put into that hobby or that passion. So we wanted to make it accessible to people. So if something does happen in your life, then you can dip out for a few weeks and then come back to it and sort of not feel this overwhelming pressure that you're going to get booted off.
And talking about what you can grow on it, again, on a normal allotment, it would be probably restrictions on the type of thing that you could grow on it. Have you put any of those restrictions in place, or is it, fairly open?
That's a really interesting question. So when we did some research at the start of this, I found some like 1908 allotment laws that were made. They push people towards only sowing and planting vegetables and fruit. Back then, our knowledge, we obviously didn't appreciate how essential pollinators were to the whole process of growing. So on our Roots Allotment sites, we allow people to grow flowers. We want people to sort of have a very much like a biodiverse approach when it comes to growing on their patch, regardless of what size it is. We want people to have things that they can eat. We want people to have things that pollinators can enjoy. So we're not going to restrict what people can grow on our site, no.
Interesting. And how do you feel about kind of herbicides and pesticides? Have you made any restrictions around those?
We've got three rules at Roots Allotments, and it's like the first rule is no dig for obvious reasons that I'm sure you went into with Charles. The second rule is no chemicals. There's a lot of research that is out there at the moment that is basically saying that chemical fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, they absolutely destroy health above and below the ground. So it didn't make sense for us to allow those at all. So we are a no chemical site. When you look at the sort of produce in the supermarkets, you can go, oh, well, that stuff on the shelf, it could contain up to 17 different pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers within that produce. And the government in this country only allow for the testing of one of those. And if it's below the legal limit, then happy days, let's sell it. But if that cocktail of 17 different chemicals adds up to above the legal limit, it's going unnoticed. So we want to make a real big effort to sort of educate people on how the natural growing process should be and what we can do to start growing in a lot more natural way, because the way we've been doing it for the last 100 years is a real detriment to the environment and our own health.
Yeah, and you are quite right. Obviously, people can go back, kind of understand more about the principles of it. But in terms of actually handing over a patch, do you prep it for somebody so that it's ready to go? Or do you say to them, this is how to prep a patch according to no dig principles, and let them do it?
We prep all the patches for everyone before they arrive. When we took over our Bath site, it was a sort of monoculture of wheat, and we took it over on the 7th of March. We built 180 no dig beds by the 23rd. Then we did a soft launch. and then we built the rest on the site. So it was a lot of work that we had to put in to get it ready, but we felt like it's like sort of a core part of what we stand for, and we wanted to make sure that people were arriving on their welcome slots and ready to get go straight away. And I've done a couple of instructional videos on how to make a no dig bed, so if someone absolutely loved the experience at Roots, they could do a mini one at home and start experimenting closer to where they live. But yeah, no, everything is ready for you when you turn up. You get a welcome pack full of seeds, you get your own trowel and access to our members area. So yeah, I just really wanted to take the legwork out of setting up an allotment and get people into growing as quickly as possible, because I think this is sort of ancestral knowledge that we're starting to lose and we're starting to grow really far apart from, and it's absolutely essential for the future of our species for us to all understand where our food comes from.
You're right. I mean, I'm just thinking, I went to look at an allotment site for somebody the other day who I work with through a charity that I work at, and he's got this patch and it looks like somebody's basically come in and nicked all the topsoil off his plot. It's dry, it's cracked, it's impoverished, it looks just awful, it's smothered in weeds. He's not that mobile, and the sheer enormity of the task facing him, he's cracking on, we're going to help him, but it's a big job for anybody to undertake. So that is so revolutionary what you're doing in terms of giving people a plot and saying, here you go, crack on with that, this is how easy it can be. So just thinking about the no dig prep, what are you actually using for your mulch, because presumably you're needing quite a bit of it?
Basically what we've got council green waste that has been aged for about 20 weeks, and then we also get a load of 4-year-old well rotted cow manure down from the local farm, which is Newton Farm Shop. Then we basically mix that and advise our customers to spread that on their beds, so we get their prep bed ready for them, which suppresses the weeds underneath it, and then we add in the broken down cow manure matter to help increase the sort of microbial activity within the bed. Because with all composts out there, or mulches, however you define it, there's not a huge amount of life in them because they've been heated to such a degree that everything has been virtually destroyed. So it's how do we sort of start to give it little bits of care packages to turn it into something that is really viable.
And then moving forward, I'm assuming you're going to be encouraging people to compost themselves, and which kind of leads me on to ask the question, what facilities have people got on site? The places they can store tools, is there water, that kind of thing?
To start off with composting, we have little compost bays, and we've also run workshops across the summer where we've shown people how to make little composters on their own beds so they can start sort of creating a good microbial environment on their patch directly. They can make their own compost tea out of it and then eventually spread it over their beds. That's just using sort of a quick bin compost method with just a wire mesh tied in a circle, and then you just chuck it in there and let it build up over time. The communal compost bins, we did go with sort of 3-bay pallet systems, but I'm going to switch those all to the big circular wire systems because it took me about 3.5 hours to take one down and reconstruct it the other day. And I just thought, wow, this is quite a lot of time spending deconstructing compost bins when I could just literally undo a wire circle, take the wire mesh off and move it to the left of it. So, I mean, this is the thing, like no one's done what we're doing before. So there's a lot of learnings to take out of our first season and work out how we can run it as a business, but also as something that just works really well and gives back to the community.
Definitely.
Then I think on tools, we've got a communal tool shed. Basically, I mean, like if you get a council allotment, you're going to have to invest in a shed, then you're going to have to invest in all the tools. That's probably going to cost about, I don't know, 300 to 400 quid. And it's still not going to be very secure. So we wanted to give people access to all the tools we need. So we've got watering cans, got 10 litres, 6.5 litres if you can't take the 10-litre ones. We've got hose, we've got rakes, we've got weeding trucks, wheelbarrows. We do have some spades if people want to go and buy something from the garden centre and dig it in if it's got a bit of a root system. But I do make sure I explain to absolutely everyone that these spades are not for digging and turning your whole patch. We've also got a sharing shelf within our tool shed where, if people have got spare seeds or spare pots, they can share that and just leave it. And community members know that's something that they can take from. Someone also puts their chicken eggs on there and sells those for like £1, which is really nice. We've also got a plug plant sharing shelf outside of the tool shed where people could, like, if you've sown too many plugs at home and then you get to your patch and you've sort of like, oh, I've run out of space, just chuck them on the shelf and someone will have them. And then we've also got a spare produce sort of shelf. So when we were going for a massive glut of courgettes and marrows a few weeks ago, like I'm sure everyone else was, there were plenty of those on the shelf. And we also managed to organise a box to go up to a pensioners supper club. And they were able to cook with all of this fresh produce that was generated from our community, that was a really beautiful moment, to be honest with you.
I have to say, actually, that's a really good thing about having sort of lots of people involved in the site, because you're kind of solving those local food supply problems and, like you say, dealing with gluts in a way that's efficient and doesn't require sort of loads of transportation and stuff. So all of that is a massive tick for me. Thinking about, obviously, community involvement, historically, allotments would have been run by committee to a large degree. And I think that was probably both a virtue and a sin, because I think they caused a lot of arguments and infighting, but also there is that community governance of the site. Are you doing anything to make sure that the people who are using your allotments are sort of feeding into the way that they're run as well?
We invite our customers to drop us an email at any time to discuss both positive and negative things. We've got an anonymous feedback section on our members portal so people can speak up without having to put a name to what they want to say. Most of all, I think I explained we had 3 rules, but I didn't come on to the third one. Our third rule is just like good vibes only. And we just want people to be kind to each other and bring positivity onto the allotment site, into their friendships that they're making, and also like sort of channel it into their growing experience. So we noticed that with traditional allotment sites, you can find some infighting and sort of this I'll tell you what to do old guard mentality, when we just thought if we make the rules real simple and explain to people that this is the base that we're working from and we all need to be kind to each other because the world is so crazy at the moment, let's just try and pour as much positivity out there. So our good vibes only rule really helps with that, and it just makes people consider how they communicate to each other.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, because there can be tensions. Everyone's cheek by jowl and maybe got a different way of doing things. But you might find, I suppose, that what I found is slightly easier to convert newer gardeners and people without any experience to no dig methods and to organic growing and no kill growing and all the rest of it, because they don't have preconceived ideas of how to do horticulture. I think sometimes it's people with the ingrained ideas and kind of received knowledge that's been passed down through generations who do find it more difficult to challenge kind of way they do things or reevaluate the way they do things. So hopefully everyone's coming with a fresh approach and a desire to learn. So hopefully that works out really well. But it was interesting as well. I did judge an allotment society produce show a couple of weeks back. And also by complete accident, I've ended up being the chairman of my local horticultural society just because nobody else wanted to do it. And we've just run our local show. And it was really interesting because one of my friends who I've kind of roped into learning how to be a judge spoke to me after the judging process. And she said, this doesn't actually sit that well, because you have to have like 6 tomatoes. They all have to be the same size. They all have to be the same shape, and they all have to be perfect. And I said to her, yes, I know. I was thinking exactly the same thing. There's just this striving for perfection when you do a show, especially one that's maybe governed by the RHS show rules, that actually doesn't really seem to have that much of an application in terms of real world growing as it is nowadays. Are you planning on doing any shows? And if so, are you looking at changing the way they're done?
I think when it comes to shows, it's something that we've spoken about and we've considered, and I would love to do it, but for me, I don't understand why vegetable shows are all around aesthetics when the end result is that it should be going in our stomachs and we should be feeling nourished and good from it. So if we are going to do something like that, we'd probably bring in an element of taste and go, right, this does look nice, but actually it probably tastes the same as a tomato that's split or a courgette that's got a little bit bigger. And I'd love to sort of combine the both and go, right, this is what people have grown and this is what we can turn into it. And now let's form a sort of holistic view of what this veg is providing us.
So in terms of kind of moving forward, obviously, I think people are going to hear this and go, this is an amazing idea. And they may want to sign up to you, or they might want to even get in touch with you in terms of potential sites. Are you happy to hear from people? What can people do to kind of help you out and to help themselves get a growing plot?
If you are living in Bristol and you want to sign up to our Abbottsley Woods site, that is now open. If you're living across the country, then please just visit our website. It's www.rootsallotments.com, and you'll be able to sign up to our, basically, it's like a waiting list sort of newsletter where we'll let you know where we're opening and when we're opening, and then you'll sort of stay informed about what our activity is in your local area. But we would love to have Roots Allotment sites everywhere. It's just the sort of positive energy that's emitting from our Bath site at the moment is wonderful. I've had people say, "Oh, Ed, I've not made friends in 3 years because of COVID. I've only seen my same friends and family members and not made any new connections. And I've come to this site and now I've made loads of new friends." And it's healing, like being outside, spending time in nature, getting your hands in the soil, making new connections. It's something that I feel needs to happen everywhere, and I would love it if it could.
Thank you very much to Ed, and thank you to Charles Dowding for recommending Ed as a guest. If you're interested in hearing my chat with Charles about no-dig growing, it's episode 175, and there's a link to the episode in the show notes. Here's Dr. Ian Bedford now, talking about a spindly-legged creature that does an excellent impersonation of an arachnid.
Autumn is the time of year when an important group of invertebrates, the arachnids, become increasingly more noticeable to us, since many species, particularly those with a yearly life cycle, will have become fully grown adults. And the pervasiveness of the most well-known taxonomic group of arachnids within our gardens will be revealed on autumnal mornings by the dew as it glistens on webs and countless layers of silken threads that the spiders trail across the plants and surfaces. But less obvious will be the many species of arachnids that don't produce silk. The ground-dwelling mites, ticks, and in warmer parts of Britain, even scorpions. But also an order of arachnids called the opilions, which are more commonly known to us as the harvestmen. Harvestmen, of which there's around 25 species in Britain, are relatively common, and although they can be seen throughout the year in a variety of habitats, they're most likely to be found during autumn and around harvest time. But without close inspection, harvestmen could easily be mistaken for cellar spiders, the daddy long-legged spiders that we often find lurking in dark corners or behind the furniture within our homes. Since just like the cellar spiders, most harvestmen have 8 long spindly legs and a small round body. But unlike the spiders, they don't have a waist, they don't produce webs, and they're not venomous. They do, however, have 2 eyes on a raised structure on their backs, and 2 large fangs that protrude from their heads, and hooks at the end of their legs that they use to catch their prey, which includes a wide variety of other invertebrates, including spiders, slugs, and even small snails. They also have an effective defence strategy, for which they readily shed a few legs if caught by a predator, and then secrete a foul-smelling liquid to deter them from being eaten. So the harvestmen are quite a unique and interesting group of invertebrates that often go unnoticed within our gardens, but are well worth keeping an eye open for.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.